Well, to talk about the 80th anniversary of D-Day, we're now joined by Dr. Jeffrey Noakes, a historian with the Canadian War Museum in Ottawa. Dr. Noakes, thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Well, Thursday, undoubtedly a significant day for many, for the people of northern France who remember the operation, the subsequent liberation, for veterans and their families. But I do wonder, for you, as a student and a teacher of history, why is the 80th anniversary so important?
Well, it's important for a number of reasons, and I think one of them is one that has become increasingly clear, of course, in the last 10 or 15 years, is that the 80th anniversary is going to be the last of the major anniversaries where any appreciable number of veterans of these events are going to be able to be present in person. And that can be both the combatants who were there, but also, of course, the French civilians who were there because these events unfold in these seaside towns and villages along the Channel coast. So part of it is because of these participants, and this may be the last opportunity that they will have to be there in person, but of course the last opportunity that the rest of us will have to be able to hear from them and see them while they're there in person as well.
Well, let me pick up on that, because is the concern here and the worry that once the few survivors that remain with us pass, that their contributions will just be forgotten? Is that what you're concerned with?
It's certainly something that I'm aware of, and I think it's something that a lot of people are aware of, and you'll hear questions being asked about it and people talking about it, is that what happens when these momentous events start moving out of the realm of lived experience, of the experience of the people who were there or their immediate families, into the realm of history, where basically there isn't anybody around anymore who can say what it was like to actually have been there. And obviously that changes the way that people think about things, it changes the way that you ask questions about things, and also it changes the way that we talk about these events, because it's no longer quite so straightforward a matter of saying, well, we'll interview this veteran who was on Juno Beach on June 6th. Certainly we can turn to oral histories to recorded interviews, but it's not necessarily the same thing as being able to actually talk with somebody in real time.
Mm-hmm. Not the same thing. It makes me wonder about how we teach military history, our own history in this country, and the consequences of not knowing. And perhaps let's begin there with the consequences. What are the consequences of not knowing our military history and contribution to the world?
Well, Canada's military history is part of the history of this country and the experiences of its people more generally. So not knowing about what happens with Canada, with Canadians, what Canadians do during these two world wars, during other aspects of our military history, both at home and abroad, means that we don't have as good an understanding or as full an understanding of the events, the experiences that shape this country and the world that we live in today. So it's part of the bigger question of, if you don't know things about your past, it can be more difficult to understand why things are the way they are today, or what things might be happening in the future. It's also because for many people, these events, especially the two world wars, are fundamental shaping experiences in their lives, but also in the history of the world and the history of the countries they live in. And be it people who've lived in Canada all their lives or people who've come to Canada at various points. These are world-shaping events that affect how people see the past, affect how people's lives have been and continue to be. And so the more we can understand about these events, the better we can understand the world we find ourselves in today. And also to get a perspective on and appreciation of and understanding of how people in the past lived and why they did the things they did and how they came to remember those events as well.
Mm-hmm. The better we understand, as you say. So are we then talking and teaching Canadian students, even adults, about our own military contributions? Are we even reflecting on it enough as a country, do you think?
Well, different people are going to have different opinions on that. Obviously, it's something we do at the Canadian War Museum, but it's also something where we help people learn to answer. I mean, people come to us with their own questions. So sometimes it can be individuals who have questions about, well, family experiences or relative. Great Aunt Sarah, who was in the Canadian Women's Army Corps during the Second World War, for instance. Or it can be somebody who wants to know something about how their community was affected by the conflict, be it a community in Canada, be it a community overseas. So we certainly are here to help people learn more about Canada's military history and to make it easier. So we provide things like research guides. We also, this is something we've been doing for a number of years now, have what we call supply line discovery boxes. And these are educational kits that are sent out free of charge, that are loaned free of charge to schools across Canada, so that students can help students learn hands-on in various ways about both the First World War and the Second World War. So there are original wartime objects, there are some reproductions of objects as well, and then personal stories, documents, images, historical materials. So there certainly is an interest in learning about Canada's military history, and different people want to learn about different aspects of it in different ways as well.
Mm-hmm. You know, before we're out of time here, I do want to focus back on D-Day because, you know, when we talk about war in the military history, I think oftentimes people will focus on the destruction and the death that comes with war. But in terms of what Canadian soldiers were able to do on D-Day, beyond the military contribution, but the contribution that they made to the greater effort overall and the legacy of it, what would you like Canadians to remember?
Well, I think it's important that people can remember that this is part of Canada and Canadians' contributions to this significant turning point in the Second World War, because D-Day is a significant turning point. It marks the return of the Western Allies to fighting against Germany in Northwest Europe, in France, and then later in Belgium and the Netherlands and in Germany ultimately. And Canadians play an integral part in that. So it's worth remembering that these events that unfold and the role that Canadians play in not just the Army, it's worth remembering the Navy and the Air Force are there as well. So Canadians serving at sea and in the air play an integral part in this Allied undertaking that helps change the course and shape the course of the Second World War, and that ultimately leads to the defeat of Nazi Germany in May of 1945. So this is an important event, and it's a dramatic event, and of course it's one of the other reasons that we commemorate it as well and why it's worth remembering.
Dr. Jeffrey Noakes, I really appreciate the time. Thank you for this.
Oh, you're welcome.